Major Russell Bennett's boots hit American soil after his fourth deployment, his last tour as an elite Army intelligence operative in the dusty shadows of conflicts that official records barely acknowledged. A man who had created dossiers on high-value targets, extracted intelligence through methods that strained the bounds of international law, and executed operations that would never see the light of declassification, Russell was accustomed to operating in gray areas. The modest colonial home in Alexandria, Virginia looked exactly as he remembered it, save for the Japanese maple in the front yard that had grown another foot in his absence. His wife Vanessa's silver BMW was parked in the driveway, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The neighborhood was unchanged, manicured lawns and American flags, a slice of normalcy he'd fought to protect but never quite felt part of. Russell adjusted his civilian clothes, still uncomfortable without the weight of tactical gear. His therapist at Walter Reed had warned him about reintegration anxiety, but Russell knew the difference between hypervigilance and genuine instinct. Something in his home had shifted. The house was too quiet when he entered. Vanessa's expensive perfume lingered in the air alongside a second scent, a cologne he didn't recognize. On the kitchen counter, 2 wine glasses stood empty, lipstick on one rim. "Van," he called out. From upstairs came hurried movements. Vanessa appeared at the top of the stairs in a silk robe, her auburn hair disheveled. "Russ, you're early," they said Thursday. Her voice carried none of the joy he'd expected. Surprise. The word fell flat as he noticed fresh sheets being hastily pulled onto their bed through the open bedroom door. Russell's tactical mind began cataloging details automatically. The way she wouldn't meet his eyes, the faint scratch mark on her collarbone. The bathroom window cracked open when every other window in the house was sealed against the autumn chill. "I thought we could have a proper welcome home," she said, descending the stairs with practiced grace. She had been a dancer when they met, and she still moved. "I was just changing the sheets for you." The lie hung between them. Russell had built a career on extracting truth from people who had spent lifetimes constructing falsehoods. He knew exactly what was happening. "How's your mother?" he asked casually, setting his duffel bag down. "Still recovering from her surgery?" Vanessa's posture relaxed slightly. "Yes, much better. The doctors say." "That's interesting," Russell interrupted. "Since I called the hospital yesterday. She was discharged 3 weeks ago." Vanessa's smile froze. "Who is he? I don't know what you're talking about." Her voice shifted to defensive indignation. "How dare you come home and immediately accuse me of—" "Don't." Russell held up a hand. "Lies are like fingerprints, Van. Everyone's got their own pattern." The facade crumbled faster than he expected. Vanessa's expression hardened into something unrecognizable, contempt. "What did you expect, Russell? You've been gone more than you've been home. For deployments in 7 years. Her voice rose. "I'm married to a ghost. A ghost who comes home with nightmares and won't tell me anything." Russell absorbed the blow without flinching. "And that justifies betrayal?" "It's not betrayal. It's survival." She wrapped her arms around herself. "Philip understands me." "Philip." The name registered immediately. "Philip Hargrove? Your divorce attorney friend." The shock in her eyes confirmed it. Russell had met the man once at a charity gala, slick, Harvard-educated, with a Rolex that cost more than Russell made in 3 months. "He's been there for me while you've been God knows where, doing God knows what." Vanessa's voice dropped to a whisper. "At least he tells me the truth." Russell laughed coldly. "The truth? A man who makes his living dismantling marriages is feeding you truth." He shook his head. "How long?" "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." A moment passed before she answered. "Since your last deployment." 14 months. Russell calculated quickly. 14 months meant while he was conducting high-risk operations in conditions that would break most men, his wife was building a new life with another man. While he was interrogating assets in windowless rooms, she was making plans to exit their marriage. "I want a divorce, Russell." Her voice was suddenly businesslike. "Philip is preparing the paperwork." "Of course he is." Russell's voice remained eerily calm. "Your lover is handling our divorce." "That seems appropriate." "Don't call him that." Her eyes flashed with irritation. "What would you prefer? Paramour? Affair partner? The man who's been sleeping in my bed?" "This isn't productive." Vanessa's training as a corporate communications director surfaced. "We can handle this like adults. Clean break, fair settlement." Russell studied her as he would a target, assessing threats, calculating vulnerabilities. The woman before him was not the same one he'd married 8 years ago. Or perhaps she was, and he simply hadn't recognized the capacity for calculation behind those green eyes. "I'll be staying with Philip tonight," she continued. "You should use this time to process. The papers will be ready next week." As she moved to climb the stairs, Russell spoke softly. "You know what we do to people who betray intelligence operatives, Van?" She froze, turning slowly. "Are you threatening me?" Russell smiled sadly. "Just an observation. Betrayal has consequences. Always. This isn't one of your war zones, Russell. This is real life. That's where you're wrong." He picked up his duffel bag. "War isn't a place. It's a condition. And you just declared one." Russell turned and walked out, leaving Vanessa standing at the foot of the stairs. As he climbed into his truck, he saw the curtain in the neighbor's window drop quickly. Mrs. Weber, always watching, always collecting neighborhood intelligence. Good. Let there be witnesses to his departure. In the rearview mirror, he watched a silver Mercedes pull around the corner and park a few houses down. Philip Hargrove, waiting for the all-clear. Russell memorized the license plate automatically, then drove away. War had rules of engagement. So did divorce. But Russell Bennett wasn't planning to play by either set. Chapter 2. Paper Cuts. The coffee shop 3 blocks from the county courthouse had become Russell's temporary command center. He sat at a corner table, laptop open, watching Philip Hargrove stride up the courthouse steps with the confidence of a man who considered the legal system his personal playground. Divorce papers had been served 2 days after Russell's return. The speed was impressive, but not surprising. What had caught Russell off guard was the content: allegations of PTSD-induced violence, claims of threatening behavior, and a request for an emergency restraining order. The document painted Russell as a ticking time bomb, a damaged veteran whose classified work had turned him into a danger to his wife. It was a character assassination crafted with statements from concerned friends who had witnessed Russell's troubling behavior. "More coffee, hon?" The waitress, Darlene, held up a pot of black coffee. With her silver-streaked hair and perpetually tired eyes, she reminded Russell of an intelligence analyst he'd worked with in Kabul. "Thanks, Darlene." He slid his cup toward her. "Busy morning at the courthouse." "Like you wouldn't believe. Hargrove's got 3 cases today." She lowered her voice. "That man could charm a snake into buying its own skin." "Watch yourself." Russell smiled. In 3 days, he'd learned more from Darlene about the local legal landscape than any official channels could provide. Small-town intelligence networks were surprisingly effective. "Any word on Judge Keller's mood today?" Darlene glanced around before leaning closer. "Arthritis is acting up. He's been popping painkillers since he arrived. Makes him impatient, less likely to read the fine print." Russell nodded his thanks as she moved to the next table. Judge Keller's medical issues weren't in any public record, but they were crucial tactical information. Pain made people cut corners. Hargrove would know this too. On his laptop, Russell reviewed the emergency hearing transcript from the previous day. Vanessa had performed brilliantly, voice breaking at appropriate moments, hesitations that suggested fear rather than fabrication. The restraining order had been granted without Russell present. His phone vibrated. A text from an unfamiliar number. Packages delivered. All 3 locations. Russell deleted the message immediately. Certain resources from his military career hadn't appeared in his official discharge papers. Certain debts were still being repaid. As he scrolled through another document, a shadow fell across his table. Standing above him was a woman in her mid-30s with close-cropped dark hair and the unmistakable posture of military service. Major Bennett. It wasn't a question. Russell closed his laptop. Not anymore. Just Russell now. Lieutenant Colonel Nora Riley. She sat without invitation. JAG Corps. Russell's expression remained neutral, though his mind raced through possibilities. JAG officers didn't typically approach former intelligence operatives in coffee shops without reason. "What can I do for you, Colonel?" Riley placed a folder on the table, keeping one hand firmly on top. "Your wife's allegations have attracted attention, Major. The nature of your operations overseas means that any public examination of your methods could become problematic for certain departments. I'm aware of the confidentiality agreements I signed. This isn't about paperwork." Riley's voice hardened. "This is about national security implications. Your wife is alleging specific instances of violence that, if detailed in open court, could compromise ongoing operations." Russell leaned back. Convenient timing. almost as if someone had coached her on exactly what to say to cause maximum damage. We've considered that possibility. Riley tapped the folder. Philip Hargrove has represented 3 military spouses in the past 2 years. All cases involve classified operations personnel. All included similar allegations. This was new information. Russell's eyes narrowed. A pattern. Perhaps. Riley finally removed her hand from the folder. The Pentagon doesn't appreciate civilians leveraging national security for divorce settlements. Russell opened the folder to find dossiers on Hargrove's previous military divorce cases. Each contained details that wouldn't be available to civilian attorneys. This wasn't just a courtesy visit. What's JAG's interest in my divorce, Colonel? Let's call it convergent goals. Riley stood. There's a hearing scheduled for next Tuesday. Temporary support and property division. I'm aware. We'll be monitoring. She adjusted her jacket. And Major, your security clearance remains active. Don't do anything that would jeopardize that status. After Riley left, Russell reopened his laptop. The meeting wasn't coincidental. Either someone at JAG was running counterintelligence on Hargrove, or they were watching Russell. Possibly both. He pulled up his email and found a new message from an encrypted account. The subject line read, Court Reporting Services with an attachment, audio files from Judge Keller's chambers. Russell plugged in his earbuds and listened to Vanessa's voice. He said he'd been trained to kill without leaving evidence. That his work overseas involved methods that no one could trace back to him. Hargrove's smooth voice followed. And did these threats seem credible to you, Mrs. Bennett? Yes. He described exactly how he would do it. Said he'd make it look like an accident. Russell's jaw tightened. The fabricated conversation continued with Vanessa describing events that had never occurred and threats never made. When the recording shifted to a private conversation between Vanessa and Hargrove after the judge left, Russell's suspicions were confirmed. Was that convincing enough? Vanessa asked. Perfect, baby. Keller ate it up. The temporary restraining order is guaranteed. We'll get the house, the accounts, everything. What if he fights back? You don't know what he's capable of. Hargrove's laugh was dismissive. He's a glorified government employee with PTSD. Against a decorated combat veteran, the court will see him as a liability. Trust me, I've handled these military types before. They break easily when the system turns against them. The recording ended. Russell sat motionless, his coffee growing cold. The strategy was clear now. Use his classified background against him, knowing he couldn't defend himself without breaching security protocols. Paint him as damaged and dangerous, while positioning Hargrove as the protective savior. It was an elegant trap, but they had made a critical error in their assessment. Russell Bennett didn't break, and he never operated without contingencies. He opened a new browser window and pulled up property records for Philip Hargrove. The attorney owned a lake house in the Shenandoah Valley, a downtown condo, and maintained an office in an upscale complex. 3 locations. Packages delivered. All 3 locations. Russell closed his laptop and left cash on the table. As he walked out, he nodded to Darlene, who watched him with knowing eyes. Small towns had their own intelligence networks, and Russell was building his own. The war had begun, but not the one Vanessa and Hargrove were expecting. This wasn't a divorce battle. This was counterintelligence. And Russell had been executing those operations since before Philip Hargrove had passed the bar. Chapter 3, The First Move. You understand what you're saying, Mr. Bennett? These are serious allegations. Detective Leona Washington studied Russell from across her desk at the Alexandria Police Department. At 47, she had the weathered look of someone who had seen every possible human deception and had grown tired of all of them. I'm aware, Detective. Russell pushed the USB drive across the desk. That's why I brought evidence. Evidence of your wife and her attorney falsifying statements to the court. Washington didn't touch the drive. Evidence you obtained how exactly? Legally. Russell maintained steady eye contact. Virginia is a one-party consent state for recordings. I was present for conversations where they discussed fabricating these claims. It wasn't entirely true, but it was close enough to create reasonable doubt. Sometimes the appearance of playing by the rules was more important than actually doing so. Washington sighed. Let me get this straight. Your wife accuses you of threatening her with your military training. Gets a restraining order. Now you're claiming she and her divorce attorney invented these threats to gain advantage in your divorce proceedings. That's correct. And you just happened to record them planning this. Russell shifted in his seat. Detective, I've spent my career identifying threats. When my wife started behaving erratically before my return, I took precautions. Precautions. Washington finally picked up the USB drive. I'll review this, but I should warn you. Domestic disputes rarely end well for anyone involved. This isn't a domestic dispute. Russell leaned forward. This is perjury and conspiracy. Washington studied him with the practiced eye of someone accustomed to separating truth from deception. Mr. Bennett, I've been doing this job for 23 years. You know what I've learned? Everyone lies. Husbands, wives, attorneys. Everyone has their version of events. Listen to the recordings, detective. Their version involves criminal conspiracy. After Washington escorted him out with non-committal assurances, Russell walked to his temporary apartment 3 blocks away. The modest one-bedroom was nothing like the Alexandria home he'd shared with Vanessa, but it served his immediate needs, anonymity and proximity. His phone rang as he unlocked the door. Bennett. He wedged the phone between his ear and shoulder as he secured the 3 locks. Major, it's Nora Riley. Do you have a moment to talk? Russell checked his watch. I'm meeting with my attorney in an hour. This won't take long. Riley's voice had the clipped efficiency of someone accustomed to tight schedules. There's been a development. Judge Keller has recused himself from your case. Russell paused. Why? Officially, a conflict of interest. Unofficially, his son works for a defense contractor that interfaces with your former unit. That's not a coincidence. No, it's not. Riley continued. Your case has been reassigned to Judge Anthony Mercer. The name triggered immediate recognition. Military background. 20 years JAG, retired as a colonel. Not easily manipulated by theatrical performances or vague allusions to classified operations. Russell processed this information. You're doing? Let's just say certain administrative suggestions were made through appropriate channels. Riley paused. There's something else. Detective Washington contacted our office regarding evidence you provided. His grip on the phone tightened. That was fast. She's thorough and concerned about potential national security implications. Riley's tone shifted. Major, I need to know exactly what you handed over. Audio recordings of my wife and Hargrove discussing their strategy. Nothing classified. You're positive? Because if there's anything that could. I know where the lines are drawn, Colonel. Russell's voice cooled. The recordings only implicate them in perjury. After a moment of silence, Riley spoke again. The hearing is still scheduled for Tuesday. Judge Mercer will require all evidence to be properly authenticated and submitted through official channels. Understood. And Major? Several individuals at the Pentagon are taking a personal interest in this case now. Tread carefully. After Riley hung up, Russell considered the implications. The JAG Corps was officially involved. Judge Keller had been replaced, and the local police were coordinating with military authorities. The battlefield was shifting in his favor, but he couldn't count on institutional support alone. Russell opened his laptop and accessed an encrypted messaging platform. He typed a brief message. Need evaluation of BH financial irregularities. Priority assets only. The response came almost immediately. In progress. Preliminary findings suggest offshore activity through shell companies. Request additional authorization for Level 2 penetration. Russell hesitated. Level 2 meant accessing protected systems, banking, private servers, encrypted communications. The legal line would be crossed definitively. Authorized. Full deniability protocols. He closed the laptop and prepared for his meeting with Patricia Alvarez, the divorce attorney he'd retained. Unlike Hargrove with his Harvard pedigree and society connections, Alvarez had built her reputation representing military personnel in contentious divorces. She understood the unique complications of cases involving classified work. As Russell changed into a suit, his phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Meeting PH at Lake House tonight. Security system disabled from 9 to 11 p.m. The pieces were moving into place. Russell checked his watch, 5:30 p.m. He had time to meet with Alvarez, establish his official legal strategy, and still make it to the lake house by 9 o'clock. The difference between Russell and his opponents was simple but critical. They were playing a game, while he was conducting an operation. Games had rules. Operations had objectives. By tomorrow, the first phase of his counterattack would be complete, and neither Vanessa nor Philip Hargrove would see it coming. Chapter 4. Evidence Chain. The Shenandoah Valley disappeared into darkness as Russell killed the headlights of his borrowed truck, navigating the last quarter-mile to Philip Hargrove's lake house by memory. The property sat on 3 secluded acres, a modernist glass and cedar structure jutting from the hillside above the water. Russell had memorized the layout from architectural plans filed with the county: 3 bedrooms, open-concept main floor, and a walkout basement with a private dock. More importantly, he'd studied the security system specifications: motion sensors covering the perimeter, window contacts, and interior cameras monitored by a private security company, all currently disabled, according to his source. He parked in a turnout a half-mile away and covered the remaining distance on foot, moving through the forest with the silent efficiency that had kept him alive in hostile territories. The gravel driveway crunched under his boots as he approached. Vanessa's BMW and Hargrove's Mercedes parked carelessly near the front entrance, interior lights still on. Amateur mistakes from people who believed themselves untouchable. Russell circled to the rear of the property where floor-to-ceiling windows provided a clear view into the main living area. Hargrove and Vanessa sat at the dining table, documents spread between them, wine glasses in hand. The casual intimacy of their interaction, Hargrove's hand resting on Vanessa's, her laughter at something he said, confirmed what Russell already knew. This wasn't just about divorce strategy. He didn't need to hear their conversation. The body language told him everything: the comfortable familiarity, the absence of professional boundaries. This wasn't a recent development. This had been building for much longer than Vanessa had admitted. Russell retrieved a small device from his pocket, a long-range microphone that fed directly to a recording app on his phone. He positioned it toward the windows, catching fragments of their conversation. "Restraining order gives us complete control of the assets," Hargrove was saying. "He can't access anything without violating the order." Vanessa sipped her wine. "What about his military pension? Can we get that?" 50% guaranteed. Maybe more if we push the PTSD angle hard enough. Make him look unstable. He's not unstable. Vanessa's voice softened. Just disconnected. Like he never really came home. Hargrove's laugh was dismissive. "Save the sentimentality for the judge, baby. Remember what we discussed? You're afraid for your life. Stick to the script." Russell recorded for 20 minutes, capturing detailed discussions of their strategy to fabricate evidence, manipulate the court, and systematically strip him of his assets. When they moved upstairs, he circled to the lakeside dock. The basement walkout door was unlocked, another careless mistake. Russell entered silently, his movements precise and economical. He wasn't there to confront them. This was intelligence gathering, not engagement. Hargrove's home office occupied a corner of the basement. Russell photographed documents on the desk, case notes, financial records, and a preliminary asset division that allocated 70% to Vanessa. He downloaded emails from the unlocked computer that detailed communications with Judge Keller before his recusal, inappropriate ex parte conversations that violated judicial ethics. Most damning was a folder labeled Military Divorces, containing case files for 3 of Hargrove's previous clients who had been married to service members with security clearances. Each followed the same template: allegations of PTSD-related threats, emergency restraining orders, and settlements heavily favoring the civilian spouse. Russell copied everything to an encrypted drive. This wasn't just about his divorce anymore. This was a pattern of targeted exploitation of military personnel. From upstairs came the sounds of movement. Russell replaced everything exactly as he'd found it and exited through the walkout door, disappearing into the darkness as easily as he'd arrived. Back in his truck, he reviewed the evidence he'd gathered. Enough to destroy Hargrove professionally and possibly result in criminal charges. Enough to expose Vanessa's willing participation in fraud. But Russell knew the legal system's limitations. Evidence obtained through unauthorized entry would be inadmissible. His recordings could be challenged under wiretapping laws. He needed to convert this intelligence into legally actionable evidence. He started the truck and headed back toward Alexandria, formulating his next move. By morning, the information he'd gathered would be transformed into something that could be used officially: anonymous tips, coincidental discoveries, and carefully orchestrated revelations. This was just Phase 1. Intel gathering. Phase 2 would begin at dawn. At 6:30 a.m., Detective Leona Washington arrived at her desk to find a large manila envelope with no return address. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. Anonymous tip regarding attorney misconduct. Check case files for Bennett, Reynolds, and McKenzie. By 7:15 a.m., Patricia Alvarez received an email from an untraceable account containing documentation of Hargrove's ex parte communications with Judge Keller and his pattern of targeting military personnel with security clearances. At 7:45 a.m., 3 separate ethics complaints were filed electronically with the Virginia Bar Association against Philip Hargrove, each coming from different IP addresses, each detailing specific violations backed by documentation. And at 8:30 a.m., when Vanessa Bennett checked her personal email, she found every message she had ever exchanged with Philip Hargrove, including those she thought had been deleted, forwarded to her own account from an unknown sender. The subject line read simply, "Last chance to reconsider your testimony." Russell Bennett didn't directly use any of the evidence he'd gathered illegally. He simply ensured it reached people who could use it legitimately. The chain of custody was broken, but the information was now in play. He arrived at Patricia Alvarez's office at 9 a.m. sharp, freshly showered and dressed in a conservative navy suit. If Alvarez suspected her client was behind the morning's flurry of revelations, she gave no indication. "Interesting developments this morning," she said, gesturing to her computer screen. "Seems your wife's attorney has some ethical issues." Russell's expression remained neutral. "That's unfortunate." "Very." Alvarez studied him with shrewd eyes. "The timing is remarkable. The truth has a way of surfacing." "Indeed it does." She closed her laptop. "Judge Mercer has called an emergency conference for this afternoon. All parties. Apparently, new evidence has emerged that may impact the restraining order." Russell nodded. "I'll be there." "You seem very calm for someone whose life has been turned upside down." Alvarez tilted her head. "Most clients in your position would be either falling apart or plotting revenge. I'm not most clients." Clearly, she gathered her notes. "Whatever happens in that courtroom today, remember one thing. Legal victories and moral victories aren't always the same. Choose carefully which one you're after." Russell stood to leave. "Why not both?" Alvarez's laugh was genuine. "Now you sound like a lawyer." Her expression sobered. "There's something else you should know. Lieutenant Colonel Riley contacted me this morning. The JAG Corps is sending a representative to today's hearing. Apparently, there are concerns about national security implications. Expected. Is there anything I should know about your military service that might affect this case?" Russell met her gaze directly. "Everything relevant is in my file." "That's not what I asked." "It's the only answer I can give." Alvarez nodded, understanding the boundaries. "Then we'll work with what we have." "But Russell," she used his first name for the first time, "whatever game you're playing, make sure you've calculated all the potential losses, not just the wins." As Russell left her office, his phone vibrated with a text from Colonel Riley. "Movement on PH financials. Overseas accounts linked to FARA violations. FBI notified." The Foreign Agents Registration Act required individuals acting as agents of foreign governments to disclose their relationships. Violation was a federal offense. Russell hadn't expected this particular thread to unravel so quickly, but he welcomed the additional pressure point. His phone vibrated again, Vanessa calling. After a moment's consideration, he answered. "Russell." Her voice was tight, with controlled panic. "What have you done?" "Hello, Van. Nice to hear from you." He kept his tone conversational as he walked to his truck. "Don't play games. My emails. Philip's files, you're behind this. I'm not allowed within 500 feet of you, remember? How could I possibly access your emails?" "This isn't funny." Her voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "Philip says this could be construed as blackmail." "Interesting. And what exactly would I be blackmailing you for?" "To drop the divorce. To withdraw my statements." Russell laughed softly. "That would be convenient, wouldn't it? Give you someone to blame for your sudden attack of conscience." A pause. "What do you want?" "The truth, Van. That's all I've ever wanted." "You don't understand what you're doing. Philip has connections. So do I." Russell cut her off. "The difference is, mine aren't limited to the country club and the courthouse. The hearing is at 2. I suggest you think carefully about what you're going to say under oath." He ended the call and drove toward the courthouse. The pieces were in motion now, converging toward a confrontation none of them had anticipated. Especially not Philip Hargrove, whose professional destruction was now merely a secondary objective. The primary target had always been the truth. And Russell Bennett had spent his career extracting it from far more formidable opponents than a divorce attorney with delusions of invulnerability. Chapter 5. Courtroom Maneuvers. Judge Anthony Mercer's chambers reflected the man, austere, meticulously organized, with military memorabilia displayed alongside legal credentials. At 62, Mercer had the bearing of someone who had transitioned from one strict hierarchy to another without missing a step. "This is highly irregular," he stated, looking over his reading glasses at the assembled parties. "I've been on this bench for 7 years, and I've never seen such a flurry of allegations, counter-allegations, and ethical complaints in a supposedly straightforward divorce proceeding." Russell sat beside Patricia Alvarez, maintaining perfect posture. Across the table, Vanessa looked pale and tense, while Philip Hargrove projected confident indignation. A third chair at their table remained empty. Their paralegal had called in sick. Colonel Riley sat at a separate table, her JAG uniform impeccable, a thick folder before her. Detective Washington stood near the door, observer rather than participant. "Before we proceed," Mercer continued, "I want to address the restraining order issued by Judge Keller. Based on new information brought to this court's attention, I'm inclined to rescind it pending further review." Hargrove immediately objected. "Your Honor, my client fears for her safety. The previous judge found sufficient cause." "The previous judge," Mercer interrupted, "appears to have had communications with you that weren't properly disclosed to all parties. That alone gives me pause. Those communications were purely administrative. Save it for the Bar Association investigation, Counselor." Mercer's tone left no room for argument. "Now, regarding the allegations of threatening behavior by Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Bennett, are you prepared to testify under oath today about those specific incidents?" Vanessa glanced at Hargrove before answering. "Yes, Your Honor. And you understand the penalties for perjury in my courtroom?" A hesitation. "Yes, Your Honor." "Good." Mercer turned to Colonel Riley. "Colonel, the Pentagon's interest in these proceedings is noted. Would you care to elaborate on the nature of that interest?" Riley opened her folder. "Your Honor, the Department of Defense has concerns about potential classified information being introduced in these proceedings. Major Bennett's service record includes operations that remain classified at the highest levels. Any testimony regarding his actions, methods, or statements that might reveal operational details would constitute a breach of national security." "I see." Mercer looked thoughtful. "And has such information already been introduced?" Some of Mrs. Bennett's allegations in the restraining order application reference specific methods and training that are not public knowledge. Hargrove intervened. "Your Honor, my client is simply recounting threats made against her. If those threats happen to include classified information, that's hardly her fault." An interesting perspective. Mercer's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Now, Detective Washington, I understand the Alexandria PD is conducting an investigation related to this case?" Washington stepped forward. "Yes, Your Honor. We're investigating allegations of perjury and conspiracy to commit fraud upon the court. We've received evidence suggesting Mrs. Bennett and Mr. Hargrove fabricated testimony regarding threatening behavior by Mr. Bennett." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Vanessa stared at her hands while Hargrove's confident expression faltered. "And this evidence came from where, exactly?" Mercer asked. "Multiple sources, Your Honor. Some anonymous, some not. We're still authenticating everything, but preliminary analysis suggests the allegations are credible." Mercer nodded slowly. "Ms. Alvarez, your client has been remarkably quiet throughout these proceedings. Does Mr. Bennett wish to make a statement?" Russell stood. "Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to address the court directly." "Proceed." Russell remained at attention, his military bearing evident. "Your Honor, I returned from my 4th deployment to discover my wife involved in an affair with Mr. Hargrove. When confronted, they initiated a calculated campaign to portray me as unstable and dangerous, using my classified service record as a weapon against me." He continued calmly. "I have never threatened my wife. I have never described classified operations to her or anyone outside my chain of command. The allegations in the restraining order are fabricated, designed to gain advantage in divorce proceedings and to intimidate me into accepting unfavorable terms." "That's absurd," Hargrove interjected. "Mrs. Bennett is the victim here." "Mr. Hargrove," Mercer warned, "you'll have your turn." Russell continued. I respectfully request that this court rescind the restraining order, grant me access to my home and financial accounts, and investigate Mr. Hargrove's pattern of targeting military personnel with security clearances in divorce proceedings. As he sat down, the door to the chambers opened. A man in a dark suit entered and whispered something to Detective Washington, who then approached the judge. Your Honor, I've just been informed that the FBI has executed a search warrant at Mr. Hargrove's office and Lake House. They're investigating potential FARA violations and financial crimes. Hargrove paled visibly. This is harassment, a coordinated attempt to intimidate my client and me. Is it? Mercer raised an eyebrow. Or is it the consequence of actions that have finally attracted the attention they deserve? He shuffled papers before continuing. In light of these developments, I'm rescinding the temporary restraining order against Mr. Bennett. I'm also ordering a complete review of all filings in this case for potential perjury. Turning to Vanessa, he added, Mrs. Bennett, I strongly suggest you consider whether you wish to proceed with testimony that may contradict evidence now in possession of law enforcement. Perjury charges can result in significant jail time. Vanessa looked stricken. I need to consult with my attorney. Of course. Mercer checked his watch. We'll take a 30-minute recess. When we reconvene, I expect some clarity on how all parties wish to proceed. As everyone filed out, Russell remained seated, his expression unchanged. Only Patricia Alvarez noticed the slight relaxation of his shoulders, the first indication that the armor he'd been wearing was beginning to lighten. In the courthouse hallway, Vanessa cornered Russell away from the others. What have you done? She hissed. Philip says the FBI is looking at his international clients. He could be disbarred. Russell. Possibly worse. Russell studied her with detached interest. Actions have consequences, Van. You chose your path. I never wanted this to get so out of control. Her voice dropped. The things I said, the allegations, Philip convinced me it was standard procedure in military divorces. And you believed him. He's a respected attorney. I trusted him. Russell's laugh was cold. You trusted the man you were cheating with to give you ethical advice about divorcing your husband? That seems like a fundamental error in judgment. Tears formed in her eyes. I know you hate me. I don't hate you, Vanessa. Russell's voice softened slightly. I just don't recognize you. The woman I married wouldn't have fabricated threats to gain financial advantage. What do you want me to do? Tell the truth. Withdraw the false allegations. Agree to reasonable divorce terms. And Philip? That's not my concern. Vanessa wiped her eyes carefully, preserving her makeup. If I do this, if I tell the truth, what happens next? We divorce like civilized people. You keep what you brought into the marriage, I keep what I brought. We sell the house and split the proceeds. Clean break. Just like that. Her disbelief was evident. After everything? Russell checked his watch. 20 minutes until we reconvene. Talk to your attorney. Make your decision. As he walked away, Colonel Riley intercepted him. Impressive maneuvering, Major. Just pursuing the truth, Colonel. Indeed. She fell into step beside him. The Foreign Agents Registration Act violations were an unexpected development. Russell kept his expression neutral. For everyone, I imagine. Hargrove represented several defense contractors with overseas interests. The kind of contractors who handle sensitive information. Concerning. Riley stopped, forcing Russell to do the same. This isn't just about your divorce anymore. Is it, Major? Was it ever? The Pentagon's interest isn't casual. 3 military personnel with high-level clearances were systematically targeted by the same attorney. That suggests either an extraordinary coincidence or a pattern of intelligence gathering, Russell finished. Using divorce proceedings to extract information from military personnel with access to classified materials. Riley nodded slowly, which would make this a counterintelligence matter, not just a messy divorce. If proven, she agreed. The FBI's cyber division is examining Hargrove's communications with certain foreign entities as we speak. But I suspect you already knew that would happen. Russell offered no response. Some operations were better left unacknowledged. One more thing, Major. Riley lowered her voice. Whatever methods you employed to bring this situation to light, and I'm not asking for details, they've attracted attention. The kind of attention that sometimes leads to job offers. I have a job, Colonel. Had, she corrected. Your discharge papers were processed 3 weeks ago. but certain departments operate on different timelines and with different criteria for recruitment. Before Russell could respond, Patricia Alvarez approached. "They're ready to reconvene," she said, looking between them curiously. "Hargrove has asked for a private conference with the judge." "Denied, I hope," Russell said. "Denied and noted for the record." Alvarez smiled grimly. Judge Mercer doesn't seem particularly impressed with Mr. Hargrove's ethical standards. They returned to the judge's chambers, where the atmosphere had shifted perceptibly. Hargrove appeared shaken, while Vanessa sat rigidly upright, her expression unreadable. Judge Mercer surveyed the room before speaking. "Mr. Hargrove informs me that Mrs. Bennett wishes to make a statement." "Mrs. Bennett, you may proceed." Vanessa stood slowly, her hands trembling slightly. "Your Honor, I want to formally withdraw the allegations of threatening behavior I made against my husband. The statements in my restraining order application were." She paused, exaggerated and, in some cases, fabricated. A murmur passed through the room. Mercer's expression remained impassive. "Are you admitting to perjury, Mrs. Bennett?" "I was advised that certain embellishments were customary in contentious divorces." Her voice strengthened. "That was poor advice, and I accept responsibility for my actions." "I see." Mercer turned to Hargrove. "And you, counselor? Do you wish to address these revelations?" Hargrove cleared his throat. "Your Honor, I maintain that I acted in good faith based on information provided by my client. If that information was inaccurate—" "Save it," Mercer cut him off. "Detective Washington, I'm referring this matter to your department for further investigation into potential perjury charges. Colonel Riley, the Pentagon may wish to review Mr. Hargrove's previous cases involving military personnel." Riley nodded. "Already in progress, Your Honor. In light of Mrs. Bennett's admission, the restraining order is formally rescinded. Mr. Bennett shall have immediate access to all marital properties and accounts." Mercer turned to Russell. "Mr. Bennett, do you wish to pursue criminal charges against your wife for the false allegations?" All eyes turned to Russell. The moment stretched as he considered his options. Pursuing charges would ensure Vanessa faced consequences, possibly jail time. It would be justified. Deserved, even. "No, Your Honor," he finally said. "I believe the truth coming to light is sufficient." Relief washed over Vanessa's face. Judge Mercer nodded thoughtfully. "Very well. We'll proceed with the divorce as an uncontested matter if both parties can agree to terms. Otherwise, we'll schedule a full hearing." Mercer fixed Hargrove with a cold stare. "Mr. Hargrove, given the circumstances, I suggest you consider whether continued representation of Mrs. Bennett represents a conflict of interest." The judge stood, signaling the end of the conference. As everyone gathered their materials, Detective Washington approached Hargrove. "Mr. Hargrove, the FBI agents at your office have requested your presence. I'd be happy to escort you." The attorney's professional facade finally cracked. "I need to call my attorney." "Of course." Washington's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You can do that from my car." Russell watched them leave, feeling neither satisfaction nor vindication. Only the calm certainty that comes from completing a mission according to plan. When he turned, he found Vanessa standing nearby, her expression a complex mixture of fear, relief, and resignation. "Is this over?" she asked quietly. "The immediate crisis, yes. The divorce will proceed. As for the rest—" Russell shrugged. "That depends on what the FBI finds. And us." "There is no us, Vanessa. There hasn't been for some time." She nodded, accepting this truth without argument. "For what it's worth, I am sorry. Not just for the allegations, for everything." Russell studied her for a moment, searching for the woman he had married. "I believe you. But some things can't be undone." As she walked away, Colonel Riley approached again. Declining to press charges was unexpected. "Vengeance isn't justice, Colonel. Sometimes they overlap." Riley handed him a business card. "When the dust settles, call this number. There's work suited to your particular skill set." Russell pocketed the card without looking at it. The war wasn't over, merely shifting to a different theater of operations. And for the first time since his return, he felt the familiar clarity of purpose that had guided him through his military career. Some battles were fought in courtrooms, others in the shadows where Russell Bennett had always excelled. The next phase was about to begin. Chapter 6: Collateral Damage. The Alexandria town house had lost its sense of home. Russell moved through the rooms, cataloging changes made in his absence. New artwork on the walls, abstract pieces that Vanessa had always disliked, but Hargrove apparently favored. Men's toiletries in the guest bathroom. A toothbrush that wasn't his. Small victories felt hollow as he realized how completely his life had been dismantled. The restraining order was lifted, the false allegations withdrawn, but the damage remained. His reputation questioned, his privacy invaded, his trust irreparably broken. Russell packed Vanessa's personal items efficiently, separating them from joint possessions. The prenuptial agreement she had dismissed so confidently would now govern their financial separation. Her inheritance would remain hers. His military pension and investments would remain his. The house would be sold, the proceeds divided according to contribution. On paper, a fair resolution. In reality, an inadequate accounting of loss. His phone rang. Patricia Alvarez. Russell, have you seen the news? No. He set down the box he'd been packing. What happened? Philip Hargrove has been arrested. The FBI found evidence of FARA violations, money laundering, and, this is the interesting part, espionage. Russell moved to the living room and turned on the television. The local news was already covering the story. Aerial footage of FBI agents removing boxes from Hargrove's office building. Espionage, he repeated. Confirmed. Preliminary charges. Apparently, he was using his position to gather intelligence from clients with security clearances. Military personnel, defense contractors, even a State Department official. And feeding that intelligence to whom? They're not saying yet. But Russell, Alvarez hesitated. This is bigger than anyone anticipated. The FBI is interviewing all of Hargrove's clients, including Vanessa. The implications unfolded in Russell's mind. If Hargrove had been gathering intelligence, then his relationship with Vanessa wasn't merely an affair of convenience. It was targeted. A military intelligence officer's wife would be a valuable asset. Has Vanessa contacted you? Alvarez asked. No. She might. She'll need separate representation now. Hargrove's firm is scrambling to distance themselves from him. After ending the call, Russell stood motionless in the center of the living room, recalibrating. The operation had escalated beyond his initial parameters. What had begun as a counterattack against false allegations had uncovered something far more significant. A potential national security breach. His phone rang again. Colonel Riley. I assume you've heard, she said without preamble. Just now. Espionage charges. Preliminary, but the evidence is compelling. Foreign bank accounts, encrypted communications with non-registered agents, and a pattern of targeting individuals with access to classified information. Russell processed this, including me. You were likely a primary target, given your clearance level and operational history. Riley paused. There's a debriefing scheduled at the Pentagon tomorrow morning. Your presence is requested. I'm a civilian now, Colonel. This transcends employment status, Major. This is a matter of national security. Her tone softened slightly, and possibly an opportunity to clarify certain independent actions you may have taken. Russell understood the subtext. The intelligence he had gathered through unofficial channels had led to Hargrove's arrest. The methods might have been questionable, but the outcome was serving a greater purpose. What time? He asked. 0800, Conference Room Alpha. Bring everything you have, official and unofficial. She ended the call before he could respond. Russell returned to packing, his mind analyzing this new development. If Hargrove was indeed engaging in espionage, then Vanessa's involvement required reassessment. Was she a willing participant? An unwitting pawn? The emotional betrayal was now compounded by potential national security implications. The doorbell interrupted his thoughts. Through the security camera, he saw Vanessa standing on the porch, alone and visibly distressed. After a moment's hesitation, he opened the door. They arrested Philip, she said immediately, her voice shaking. The FBI questioned me for 3 hours. Russell stepped aside to let her enter. What did they ask? Everything. What Philip told me about his clients, whether he asked about your work, whether I shared information about your deployments. Vanessa collapsed onto the sofa, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. They said he might have been spying, Russell finished. Using his clients to gather intelligence. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. Did you know? Is that why you were so thorough in destroying him? I suspected he was exploiting his position. The extent wasn't clear until recently. They showed me documents, Russell. Client files with notes about classified projects, including notes about you. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Notes I didn't provide. The implications hung in the air between them. If Vanessa hadn't been Hargrove's source for information about Russell, then someone else had. There's a leak, Russell said. Someone with access to my service record. The FBI asked if you ever mentioned someone named Dmitry Volkov. The name registered immediately. A Russian intelligence officer Russell had encountered during operations in Eastern Europe. The connection was a concerning development. What did you tell them? That I'd never heard the name. Vanessa met his eyes directly. I never betrayed your work, Russell. The divorce, the affair, that's between us. But I would never compromise national security. Russell assessed her statement, applying the same analytical skills he'd used in interrogations. Her body language suggested sincerity, but he'd been wrong about her before. Did Hargrove ever ask specific questions about my deployments? Locations, contacts, operational details? He tried. Said it would help with the divorce if he understood the nature of your absences. She shook her head. I told him military spouses learn not to ask those questions. I thought he was just being thorough, and he had access to this house. Russell gestured to the space around them. To my home office. My files. Yes. Understanding dawned on her face. Oh God, Russell. My keycard for the alarm system would show entry times. You were gone, and I was often at his place or working late. Plenty of opportunity to search for information. Russell's mind worked through the scenarios. The FBI will want access to our security logs, cameras. Russell, I swear I didn't know. Tears formed in her eyes. I was selfish and hurt and stupid, but I wasn't a traitor. The distinction mattered, though Russell wasn't sure why. Perhaps because it reframed their personal conflict. Vanessa had betrayed him as a husband, but not as a soldier. It was a meaningless comfort, yet somehow significant. What happens now? She asked. You'll need an attorney, not from Hargrove's firm. The FBI will continue their investigation. There will be counterintelligence assessments, security reviews. Russell paused. And our divorce proceeds as planned. Vanessa nodded, accepting this without argument. Will they charge me with anything? Depends what they find. If you were genuinely unaware of Hargrove's activities, probably not. Russell studied her. Were you unaware, Vanessa? Yes. The word came quickly, definitively. I made many mistakes, Russell, but not that one. The strange intimacy of crisis hung between them. Former partners navigating a catastrophe that affected them both. For a brief moment, Russell saw a flash of the woman he'd married. Direct, intelligent, capable of facing hard truths. I have a debriefing at the Pentagon tomorrow, he said. They'll want details about how I uncovered Hargrove's activities. Understanding crossed her face. You didn't just happen to find evidence, did you? You ran an operation on him. I protected myself from false allegations. Vanessa laughed softly, without humor. That's not a denial. No, it's not. She stood, straightening her clothing with the automatic dignity he'd always admired. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for the allegations or the affair. For not understanding what your work cost you. Russell remained silent, unwilling to offer absolution he didn't feel. I'll have my things removed by the end of the week, she continued. Patricia has the divorce settlement. I've signed everything. As she moved toward the door, Russell spoke. Vanessa, the FBI will be watching you. Don't leave town without notifying them. She nodded, understanding the warning for what it was, not a threat, but professional advice from someone who knew how these investigations proceeded. After she left, Russell returned to his packing, but his mind was elsewhere. Tomorrow's Pentagon debriefing would require careful navigation. The intelligence he'd gathered through unofficial channels had produced valuable results, but his methods existed in a gray area, neither fully sanctioned nor entirely rogue. His phone chimed with a text message from an unfamiliar number. Volkov connection confirmed. Your extraction point has been compromised. Exercise extreme caution. The message vanished after 30 seconds, a self-destructing communication from one of his former operational contacts. If Volkov was involved, the situation had escalated beyond a simple case of a lawyer gathering intelligence. This was now potentially a matter of active foreign operations on American soil. Russell moved to his home office and retrieved a small electronic device from a hidden compartment in his desk. The signal detector would identify any surveillance equipment installed during his absence. Room by room, he swept the house, discovering 3 listening devices, one in the living room, one in his office, and one in the bedroom. Rather than removing them, he left them in place. Better to control what was heard than create silence that would alert whoever was listening. Into the bedroom device, he spoke clearly. Dmitri, if you're listening, you should know. It's considered impolite to enter someone's home uninvited. The bait was set. If Volkov or his associates were monitoring, they would now know that Russell was aware of their involvement. In counterintelligence, sometimes the most effective strategy was to force your opponent to react. Russell continued packing, outwardly calm but internally alert. The personal battle with Vanessa and Hargrove had unexpectedly uncovered a professional threat. The rules of engagement had changed. This was no longer just about a divorce. This was what Russell had been trained for, identifying and neutralizing threats to national security. And for the first time since his return, he felt the familiar clarity of purpose that had defined his military career. The war had entered a new phase. Chapter 7. Classified Response. The Pentagon's Counterintelligence Division operated from an unmarked section of the massive complex, accessible only through a series of security checkpoints. Russell moved through them with practiced efficiency, his civilian clothes at odds with the military bearing he'd never lost. Conference Room Alpha was actually a SCF, Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, designed to prevent electronic eavesdropping. Inside, 7 individuals waited around a polished conference table. Colonel Riley nodded in greeting. The others were unknown to Russell, though their posture and demeanor marked them as intelligence community veterans. Major Bennett, a man in his 60s with steel-gray hair and the physique of someone who refused to acknowledge age, stood to greet him. Thomas Blackburn, Director of Counterintelligence Operations. Sir. Russell shook his hand. Though it's just Mr. Bennett now. We'll see about that. Blackburn gestured to a chair. You're at the center of something significant, whether you intended to be or not. The others introduced themselves briefly, representatives from FBI Counterintelligence, CIA Domestic Operations, and the National Security Agency. Their presence confirmed the seriousness of the situation. Let's get to it. Blackburn began once Russell was seated. Philip Hargrove has been operating as an unregistered agent for Russian intelligence for approximately 4 years. His specialty was legal representation of individuals with security clearances, particularly military personnel involved in classified operations. A folder slid across the table to Russell. Inside were surveillance photos of Hargrove meeting with known Russian intelligence officers in various locations: Geneva, Cancun, Toronto. Among them was Dmitry Volkov. Your counterintelligence operation against Hargrove accelerated a case we've been building for months, Blackburn continued. The evidence you uncovered provided the probable cause needed for the search warrants that yielded definitive proof. I wasn't conducting a counterintelligence operation, Russell clarified. I was defending myself against false allegations. Blackburn's smile was knowing. Your methods suggest otherwise, Major. Surveillance, electronic intelligence gathering, strategic information dissemination through cutouts. These are not typical divorce tactics. Perhaps divorce attorneys and intelligence officers share certain skill sets. Perhaps. Blackburn nodded to an FBI agent, who opened a laptop. We've reviewed the intelligence you gathered, though we're still unclear on your methods. The implied question hung in the air. Russell considered his response carefully. Unofficial operations, even those yielding valuable intelligence, existed in a gray area that could lead to legal consequences. I employed resources developed during my service, he finally said. Personal contacts, not official channels. These contacts have names, I assume. They do. But I won't be providing them. The tension in the room thickened. Russell maintained eye contact with Blackburn, who studied him thoughtfully before nodding. Fair enough. Results matter more than methods in this instance. He turned to the laptop. The key question is whether your wife was a witting or unwitting participant in Hargrove's intelligence gathering. Russell considered the evidence he'd gathered in Vanessa's demeanor during their last conversation. Unwitting. Hargrove cultivated her for access, not collaboration. Our preliminary assessment agrees, the FBI agent said. Mrs. Bennett's communications show no awareness of Hargrove's true activities. She appears to have been an access vector, nothing more, and a convenient source of allegations that would distract and neutralize you, Blackburn added. Your security clearance, operational history, and current status made you a person of interest. The restraining order effectively isolated you from your resources and support networks. Russell processed this information. The divorce wasn't incidental. It was operational. Exactly. Blackburn nodded. Hargrove identified you as a threat, someone who might recognize his intelligence-gathering activities. The divorce and restraining order were tactical moves to neutralize that threat. The realization reframed everything. Vanessa's affair and their divorce weren't purely personal matters. They were components of a foreign intelligence operation. The betrayal Russell had felt so acutely was more complicated than he'd understood. "You've been running an investigation on Hargrove for months," Russell said. "Why wasn't I warned?" "Operational security," Colonel Riley answered. "If you'd been alerted, your behavior might have changed in ways that would alert Hargrove. So I was left exposed as bait." "Not intentionally," Blackburn clarified. "Your return from deployment coincided with a critical phase of our investigation. By the time we recognized the connection, events were already in motion." Russell accepted this explanation with professional detachment. Intelligence operations often involved unforeseen collateral damage. In this case, he had been that collateral. "What happens now?" he asked. "Hargrove faces espionage charges. His legal career is over. Several of his associates are under investigation for potential involvement." Blackburn leaned forward. "But Volkov remains at large, possibly still operating within the United States. And my role in this?" Blackburn exchanged glances with Colonel Riley before responding. "That depends on you, Major. Your discharge paperwork could be revisited. Your expertise would be valuable in the ongoing operation against Volkov's network. You're offering me reinstatement, with promotion to lieutenant colonel and assignment to a joint counterintelligence task force." Blackburn slid another folder across the table. "Or you can walk away. Return to civilian life with the thanks of a grateful nation and our assurances that this situation will not negatively impact your future endeavors." The offer was unexpected, but not surprising. Intelligence officers with Russell's experience and proven capabilities were rare. The discovery of Hargrove's espionage activities had demonstrated his continued effectiveness. "I need time to consider," Russell said. "Of course." Blackburn stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "You have 48 hours. After that, operational necessities will require us to proceed with or without you." As the room cleared, Colonel Riley remained behind. Once they were alone, she spoke candidly. "They're not telling you everything, Russell. They never do. Hargrove's network is more extensive than they're admitting. At least 3 other attorneys in different jurisdictions are suspected of similar activities." Russell absorbed this information. A coordinated effort to target military personnel with security clearances through divorce proceedings. Elegant and effective. Emotional distress, financial pressure, legal complications, perfect conditions for exploitation. Riley lowered her voice. "Volkov personally handled the high-value targets, including you." "Meaning?" "Meaning he's been to your home, possibly had direct contact with your wife." The implications settled like ice in Russell's veins. "You have proof of this?" "Surveillance photos. Vanessa meeting with a man matching Volkov's description at a restaurant in Georgetown 3 months ago, while you were deployed." "Does she know who he is?" "Unknown. He used the name Daniel Valles, supposedly a colleague of Hargrove's." Riley handed him a small flash drive. "This isn't in the official file yet. I thought you should see it first, given the personal implications." Russell pocketed the drive without comment. The boundaries between personal and professional had blurred beyond recognition. Whatever decision he made about reinstatement would be complicated by this new information. "One more thing," Riley said as they walked out. "Vanessa's been placed under protective surveillance. Not because we suspect her involvement, but because she may be at risk if Volkov believes she knows too much. I'll speak with her. Carefully. We don't want to trigger a response from Volkov's network." Russell nodded, his mind already formulating a plan. The personal betrayal he'd experienced had been subsumed by professional threat assessment. Vanessa was now an intelligence asset to be managed rather than a wife who had betrayed him. The clarity was almost a relief. The private investigator's office above a bail bond shop in Alexandria wouldn't have been Russell's first choice for a meeting location, but Darius Wyatt had insisted. As a former FBI agent turned private contractor, Wyatt maintained a specific operational aesthetic, deliberately shabby to discourage casual clients. These surveillance photos are interesting, Wyatt said, examining the flash drive contents on his computer. The man with your wife, definitely Volkov, though he's had some cosmetic alterations since his last known appearance. Is there any indication of her awareness of his identity? Body language suggests a professional, not personal, interaction. She's guarded, maintains formal distance. Wyatt zoomed in on one image. See how she keeps her hands visible on the table? Unconscious defensive posturing. Russell studied the image. Vanessa sat across from a man in his 50s with the generic handsomeness of someone who didn't want to be remembered. Her expression was polite but reserved. What was discussed? Without audio, impossible to be certain. But based on the timeline, Wyatt checked his notes. This meeting occurred 2 weeks before she filed for divorce. Timing suggests this was when the operation against you was initiated. The realization was both professionally intriguing and personally devastating. Vanessa's decision to end their marriage may have been influenced by a Russian intelligence officer. The authenticity of her emotions, her affair with Hargrove, all potentially elements of a coordinated operation. I need to know if she was coerced, Russell said. Difficult to determine from surveillance alone. Wyatt leaned back in his chair. You could ask her directly and compromise the investigation, or advance it. Wyatt closed the images. Sometimes the direct approach yields information that surveillance misses. Russell considered this perspective. His training favored caution, compartmentalization, and controlled information flow. But those principles applied to traditional intelligence targets, not to the woman he'd shared a life with. I'll consider it. Russell stood to leave. Keep monitoring the situation. I want to know if Volkov attempts contact again. Already have surveillance in place. Wyatt handed him an encrypted phone. Updates will come through this. Secure channel, untraceable. Outside, Russell walked to his truck, processing the implications of what he'd learned. The Pentagon's offer of reinstatement now made more sense. They wanted his personal connection to the case. His emotions were an operational asset. His phone rang. Patricia Alvarez. Russell, Vanessa just called me. She's received a job offer in Boston. Wants to know if relocating would violate any terms of the divorce settlement. Boston. Russell processed this information quickly. When did this offer come? This morning, apparently. Some consulting firm. She seemed eager to accept. Advise her to delay any decision for at least 72 hours. Tell her there are tax implications we need to review. Is something wrong? Alvarez's legal instincts detected the urgency in his voice. Possibly. I'll explain later. After ending the call, Russell immediately contacted Colonel Riley. Vanessa's received a job offer in Boston. Timeline suggests a reaction to Hargrove's arrest. Extraction, Riley responded immediately. They're trying to get her out of our jurisdiction. I'll alert the surveillance team. No, that could trigger a more aggressive response. Russell's mind worked through the scenarios. Let her think she's considering the offer. Meanwhile, trace the consulting firm. It's likely a shell company connected to Volkov's network. Agreed. What's your plan? I'm going to speak with her directly. Create an opportunity to identify whoever's handling this extraction attempt. Dangerous. Riley's concern was evident. For both of you. But controlled. I know the players and the environment. Russell checked his watch. I'll make contact this evening. Have your team maintain distance, but be prepared to intervene. After ending the call, Russell drove toward the Alexandria house. The personal and professional had merged completely now. His intimate knowledge of Vanessa would serve the counterintelligence operation, while his professional training would protect them both from a threat she likely didn't recognize. The chessboard had expanded, the pieces rearranged. What had begun as a bitter divorce was now a counterintelligence operation with national security implications. And Russell Bennett was back in familiar territory, identifying threats, neutralizing risks, and protecting assets. Even if the asset was the woman who had betrayed him. Chapter 8. Calculated Counterattack. Russell arrived at the Alexandria house to find Vanessa packing books into cardboard boxes. She startled when he entered, clearly not expecting him. I thought you'd be at work, she said, recovering quickly. Change of plans. Russell surveyed the half-empty bookshelves. Moving plans seemed to be accelerating. Vanessa's hands stilled momentarily. I was going to call you. I've received a job offer in Boston. A fresh start seems appropriate, given everything that's happened. Interesting timing. Russell moved to the kitchen and casually opened the refrigerator, positioning himself to view the entryway while appearing relaxed. What's the company? Meridian Consulting. They specialize in corporate communications for international clients. She resumed packing. The salary is generous, and they're offering relocation assistance. How did they find you? A slight hesitation. A colleague recommended me. Which colleague? Vanessa set down the book she was holding and turned to face him fully. What's with the interrogation, Russell? The divorce agreement doesn't restrict my employment options. No, it doesn't. He maintained a casual tone. But your involvement in an espionage investigation might. The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? Philip Hargrove wasn't just having an affair with you, Vanessa. He was gathering intelligence for a foreign government. Anyone associated with him is now under scrutiny, including you. That's absurd. Her voice rose slightly. I had nothing to do with any espionage. The FBI seems to agree. So far, Russell took a calculated risk. But Daniel Velez might have a different perspective. The name registered immediately, a flicker of recognition she couldn't hide. I don't know who that is. Georgetown. 3 months ago. Lunch at Cafe Milano. Russell watched her reaction closely. You wore your blue Burberry dress. The one I bought you in London. Vanessa's composure slipped further. How do you? His real name is Dmitry Volkov, Russian intelligence. And he's trying to get you to Boston to extract information about what you know. She sank into a chair, the pretense evaporating. He said he was Philip's client, a businessman interested in supporting my charity work. And the job offer came through him. She nodded slowly. Indirectly, he connected me with the CEO of Meridian. Her eyes widened with dawning realization. It's not real, is it? The company, the job. Probably not in the way you think. Russell pulled out a chair and sat across from her. I need you to tell me exactly what you discussed with Volkov and what communications you've had since. Vanessa's training as a corporate communications director surfaced. She organized her thoughts, describing 2 meetings with Volkov and subsequent emails regarding the Boston position. Nothing in her account suggested she had known his true identity or purpose, but several details caught Russell's attention. He asked about your upcoming deployments, where you might be sent next. She shook her head. I told him military spouses aren't given that information. He laughed and said Philip had mentioned you were in intelligence, so I probably knew more than I admitted. How did you respond? I said Philip shouldn't discuss his client's personal information. She met Russell's eyes directly. I never confirmed or denied your role. Operational security was the one aspect of military life I always respected, even if I resented it. Russell believed her. Vanessa had many flaws, but carelessness with classified information wasn't among them. She had attended enough military spouse briefings to understand the risks. The job offer came yesterday, she continued. The timing seemed perfect after everything with Philip. A clean break, a new city. They're trying to get you away from federal protection, Russell explained. Once in Boston, they'd have operatives in place to continue extracting information about Hargrove, about me, about what you've told authorities. Fear flickered across her face. Am I in danger? Potentially. Volkov doesn't leave loose ends. Russell's phone vibrated with a text message. He checked it briefly, Wyatt confirming surveillance and position around the house. But you're protected now. By whom? That's not important. Russell redirected. What matters is your next communication with Meridian Consulting. When are you expected to respond to their offer? Tomorrow morning. She wrapped her arms around herself, a defensive posture Russell had seen many times during their marriage when she felt vulnerable. What should I do? Accept the position. Russell held up a hand when she began to protest. Conditionally, request an in-person meeting to discuss details before making a final commitment. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You want to trap them? We want to identify additional members of Volkov's network. Your communication channel is valuable. And what happens to me in this scenario? You'll be protected. Russell's tone left no room for doubt. This operation will be fully sanctioned and supervised. Vanessa studied him, her expression shifting from fear to something resembling resolve. You're back in, aren't you? They've reactivated you. Not officially. Yet. But you're considering it. She laughed softly, without humor. Our divorce wasn't enough to pull you away from that life. But Russian spies might be enough to pull you back in. The observation was uncomfortably perceptive. Russell didn't confirm or deny it. If I help with this, she continued, what happens afterward? Will I still be watched? Followed. My life disrupted whenever someone decides I might be useful. Once Volkov's network is neutralized, you'll be free to move on. Russell kept his voice professional. This isn't personal, Vanessa. It's national security. It feels pretty personal from where I'm sitting. She stood and moved to the window, checking the street outside. Who's watching the house right now? Professionals. Your people or the government's? Both. She turned back to him. You always existed in gray areas, Russell. Even before we met, even before your deployments. It's who you are. Her voice softened. I think I always knew that, and it's why things fell apart. I wanted certainty. You live in ambiguity. The assessment was surprisingly insightful. Their marriage had faltered long before Hargrove's appearance. The fault lines created by Russell's comfort with moral complexity and Vanessa's need for clear boundaries. Will you help? He asked simply. She considered for a long moment before nodding. Yes, but not for you, and not for some abstract notion of national security. I'll do it because these people used me, manipulated my genuine unhappiness for their purposes. That deserves a response. Fair enough. Russell stood. Draft your email to Meridian tonight. I'll have someone review it before you send it tomorrow. And then we wait for them to set the meeting. Meanwhile, you continue packing, continue your routine. Nothing changes visibly. As Russell moved toward the door, Vanessa called after him. Russell, when this is over, when Volkov is caught and Hargrove is prosecuted, what happens to us? He turned back. The divorce proceeds as agreed. You get your fresh start. Is that what you want? The question caught him off guard. For weeks, he had operated on the assumption that their marriage was irreparably broken, first by her betrayal, then by her false allegations. The revelation that both had been influenced by a Russian intelligence operation complicated that narrative without changing the underlying reality. What I want isn't relevant anymore, he finally said. Too much has happened. Vanessa nodded, accepting this answer without argument. For what it's worth, I am sorry. For everything. Russell acknowledged her apology with a slight nod. Send me the draft email when it's ready. And Vanessa, don't discuss this with anyone. Your phones are likely monitored, your email compromised. Assume everything is being watched. Just like being married to you, she replied, a ghost of their old banter surfacing briefly. Russell left without responding, the familiar weight of operational planning replacing the emotional complexity of their conversation. Outside, he nodded subtly to an unmarked car containing Wyatt's surveillance team, then called Colonel Riley. She's cooperating, he reported. Email to Meridian Consulting goes out tomorrow morning, requesting an in-person meeting. Good. We'll have a team ready to track whoever responds. Riley paused. Are you confident in her reliability? Yes. She's motivated by personal vendetta now. Discovering she was manipulated has shifted her perspective. Revenge is a powerful motivator. Riley's tone suggested experience with this principle. What's your assessment of the threat level? Moderate to high. Volkov knows Hargrove's arrest compromises his operation. He'll want to contain potential damage quickly. Agreed. We're monitoring known associates, entry points, financial transactions. So far, no direct sign of Volkov himself. He's too experienced for obvious movements. Russell started his truck. The meeting with Meridian is our best opportunity to identify his current operational structure. After ending the call, Russell drove to a small apartment he'd rented under an alternate identity, a precaution that now seemed prescient rather than paranoid. Inside, he activated a secure laptop and reviewed the intelligence assembled on Volkov's network. The Russian officer's methodology was consistent with his training: identify vulnerabilities, apply pressure gradually, maintain plausible deniability. Using divorce attorneys as access points to military personnel was innovative but logical. Emotional distress, financial pressure, and legal complications created perfect conditions for intelligence exploitation. Russell's phone chimed with an encrypted message from Wyatt. Subject in motion. Heading to downtown hotel. Meeting unknown party. Vanessa was on the move, despite their conversation. Russell immediately called Wyatt. Who's she meeting? Unknown. Reservation at the Jefferson under the name Meridian Consulting. They moved faster than anticipated. Russell was already grabbing his car keys. Maintain surveillance, but don't intervene. I'm en route. Woman entered the hotel 3 minutes ago. Matches description of Meridian CEO from their website. Catherine Mills. Send me her image. Russell started his truck. and alert Colonel Riley. This could be the primary contact. 20 minutes later, Russell entered the Jefferson's elegant lobby, moving with the confident nonchalance of someone who belonged. A quick scan identified Wyatt's surveillance team, two individuals positioned with optimal sightlines to the hotel restaurant where Vanessa sat opposite a blonde woman in her 40s. Russell took a position at the bar, angle calculated to observe without being obvious. The woman matching Catherine Mills' description was speaking animatedly, while Vanessa listened with professional attention. Nothing in their interaction suggested coercion or tension. His phone vibrated, Riley calling. "Catherine Mills is legitimate," she said without preamble. CEO of Meridian Consulting for 8 years. No known intelligence connections. But her husband has business interests in Moscow and St. Petersburg. The connection, Russell concluded. Mills may be unwitting or compartmentalized. We're running deeper background now. Russell continued observing the meeting. Vanessa's body language was relaxed but alert. She was maintaining her cover while gathering information. The training in operational security she had absorbed during their marriage was serving her well. After 45 minutes, the women stood and exchanged business cards. Handshakes, professional smiles. Mills departed first, exiting through the lobby. Russell tracked her progress, noting a brief interaction with the doorman. Something exchanged, too quick to identify. Subject 2 exiting now, he reported to Wyatt via text. Possible dead drop with doorman. Confirmed, came the response. Package passed. Team 3 following. Russell remained in position as Vanessa settled the bill and exited the restaurant. She walked through the lobby without acknowledging him, maintaining operational discipline. Only as she passed did she drop a napkin from her purse, a seemingly accidental gesture that left the paper near his foot. He waited 30 seconds before retrieving it. Written in Vanessa's precise handwriting, Boston interview Friday. Mills arranging flight. V. The operation was accelerating. Whatever Volkov's extraction plan entailed, it was moving forward despite Hargrove's arrest. The involvement of Mills, whether witting or unwitting, suggested a more extensive network than initially assessed. Russell texted Riley, Friday timeframe confirmed. Subject proceeding with cooperation. As he exited the hotel, his training registered a subtle shift in the environment. A black SUV idling across the street, windows tinted beyond legal limits. Two men in business attire watching the entrance with too much focus. Not Wyatt's team. Not Riley's people. Someone else was monitoring the meeting. Russell adjusted his path, approaching from an angle that would appear casual while providing a better view of the vehicle's occupants. As he crossed the street, the SUV's engine started. Russell increased his pace slightly, positioning himself to glimpse the driver as the vehicle pulled away. The face was visible for only a moment, but it was enough. Dmitry Volkov himself, older, features subtly altered by cosmetic surgery, but unmistakable. Russell immediately contacted Riley. Volkov is here, personally monitoring the meeting. Black Suburban, diplomatic plates, heading east on 16th Street. Tracking now, Riley responded, professional calm masking obvious excitement. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. Understood. Russell watched the vehicle disappear into traffic. He wouldn't expose himself without reason. The operation is high priority. Or compromised. We need to extract Vanessa immediately. Negative. If we pull her now, we lose the network. Russell calculated quickly. Volkov's presence means this is bigger than Hargrove. The Boston connection is key. A moment of silence as Riley considered. The Pentagon team wants to proceed with the original plan. Use the Boston interview to identify additional assets. And Vanessa? Full protection detail, but covert. We can't risk alerting Volkov that we've made him. Russell processed this decision. The operational logic was sound, but it placed Vanessa at the center of a dangerous counterintelligence operation, a position she hadn't been trained for. I want to brief her personally, he said. She needs to understand the escalated risk. Agreed. But secure location only. Your previous residence is likely compromised. After ending the call, Russell sent a secure message to Vanessa's emergency phone, a device he'd provided earlier that day. Change of plans. Meet at Location Alpha. 1 hour. Location Alpha was a safe house in Arlington they had established during their marriage, a precaution Russell had insisted upon given his work. The fact that Vanessa remembered the protocol and responded with a simple acknowledgement suggested she understood the seriousness of the situation. As Russell drove toward Arlington, he reflected on the irony of their circumstances. The divorce that had seemed so personal, so devastating, had been partially engineered by a foreign intelligence operation. The betrayal that had broken their marriage had been influenced, if not orchestrated, by Volkov's network. Yet the damage remained real, regardless of its origins. Trust, once broken, couldn't be repaired simply by identifying external manipulation. Whatever happened with the counterintelligence operation, the fundamental breach between them remained. Russell parked 2 blocks from the safe house and approached on foot, scanning for surveillance with practiced ease. The modest apartment building offered nothing remarkable, perfect anonymity in a city designed for temporary residents. Vanessa arrived 10 minutes later, following similar counter-surveillance protocols. Inside the apartment, she immediately noted the sparse furnishings: a table, 2 chairs, basic kitchen supplies. No personal touches, nothing that would identify its occupants. "This is surreal," she said, removing her coat. "Using our emergency protocols for an operation against Russian intelligence." "Volkov was there," Russell replied without preamble. "Outside the hotel, monitoring your meeting with Mills." Her composure faltered slightly. "He saw me." "Yes, but that was expected given your previous contact." Russell gestured for her to sit. "What I didn't anticipate was his personal involvement. This operation has high priority for Russian intelligence." "Because of you?" "Partially. But there's something bigger at play." Russell remained standing, tactical mind working through scenarios. "Tell me exactly what Mills discussed regarding Boston." Vanessa recounted the conversation in detail, the position offered, the responsibilities outlined, the clients mentioned. Nothing overtly suspicious, but several details caught Russell's attention. She mentioned defense contractors as clients. 3 specifically. All with government contracts, apparently. Russell nodded. "Access points. Similar to Hargrove's strategy with military personnel. She wants me in Boston by Monday. Said they need someone to handle immediate crisis communications for a client facing regulatory issues." Vanessa's expression showed growing understanding. "That's not real, is it?" "The job might be real. The crisis communications role is cover for intelligence gathering." Russell paced slowly. "They want you because of your connection to me and to Hargrove. You're a potential source of information about both. So what happens now? Do I go to Boston?" "Yes." Russell's decision was immediate, but with a full protection detail. "The operation proceeds, but with enhanced security." Vanessa absorbed this information silently before responding. "I'm bait. You're an asset in a counterintelligence operation." Russell corrected automatically. "An operation that could dismantle a significant foreign intelligence network operating on American soil. The distinction feels academic from my perspective." She met his gaze directly. "What aren't you telling me?" Russell considered how much to reveal. Operational security suggested limited information sharing, but Vanessa's cooperation required a certain level of transparency. "Boston isn't just about you," he finally said. "Meridian Consulting has connections to defense contractors working on classified projects. The timing, the urgency of your recruitment, it suggests they're planning something significant." "Beyond information gathering?" "Possibly." Russell didn't elaborate further, which is why identifying their entire network is critical. Vanessa processed this silently before speaking again. "If I do this, if I help you catch Volkov and his people, what happens afterward? To us?" The question circled back to personal terrain Russell had been avoiding. "That depends on what you want to happen. I don't know anymore." Her honesty was disarming. 3 months ago, I was certain divorce was the answer. Now, knowing that Hargrove and Volkov manipulated that decision, she shook her head. "I'm not saying they created problems that weren't there. Our marriage was struggling, but they exploited those struggles, accelerated the breakdown." "For operational purposes," Russell noted clinically. "Yes, but that doesn't erase the genuine issues between us." Vanessa looked directly at him. "You were always more committed to your work than to our marriage. I was always more interested in certainty than complexity. Those fundamental incompatibilities remain, regardless of Russian interference." The assessment was painfully accurate. Russell couldn't deny the truth in her words. Their marriage had been vulnerable to exploitation precisely because of these pre-existing fault lines. After Boston, After this operation concludes, he said carefully, you'll be free to make whatever decisions serve your interests. The divorce can proceed as planned, or we could reconsider, she finished, with full awareness of how we were manipulated. It's an option. Russell maintained professional distance despite the personal nature of the conversation. But not a decision that needs to be made now. The operation takes priority. Vanessa nodded, understanding the compartmentalization that had always characterized their relationship. So I go to Boston. I meet with Meridian's team. I identify Volkov's network. Then what? Then we extract you and neutralize the threat. Russell outlined the operational parameters, her communications protocols, emergency procedures, recognition signals for the protection detail that would be in place. As they finalized the details, Russell received a text from Colonel Riley. Pentagon Briefing 0600 tomorrow. Full operational planning for Boston. Your official reinstatement paperwork being processed. The decision had been made for him. Russell Bennett was being pulled back into the world he had never fully left, the shadow realm of counterintelligence where personal and professional boundaries blurred beyond recognition. And Vanessa, despite everything that had transpired between them, would be his operational partner in what might be the most significant counter-espionage operation of his career. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Chapter 9, The Final Strike. The Boston operation unfolded. Vanessa arrived on Friday morning, met at Logan Airport by Catherine Mills, and escorted to Meridian Consulting's downtown offices. The 12-story glass building housed multiple companies, providing excellent cover for the surveillance teams positioned throughout the structure. From a secure room 3 floors above Meridian's offices, Russell monitored the operation alongside Colonel Riley and a team of counterintelligence specialists. Multiple screens displayed camera feeds from security systems they had accessed, while audio surveillance captured conversations throughout Meridian's suite. Tour of the offices complete, reported a technician monitoring Vanessa's movements. Subject being introduced to executive team now. Russell watched as Vanessa moved through the introductions with practiced corporate grace, professional smiles, firm handshakes, appropriate questions about the company's structure and clients. Nothing in her demeanor suggested she was at the center of a counterintelligence operation. She's good, Riley observed. Natural. Corporate communications director for 8 years, Russell replied. Crisis management was her specialty. On screen, Mills led Vanessa into a conference room where 5 individuals waited. Russell immediately recognized 2 of them from intelligence briefings, known associates of Volkov with diplomatic cover at the Russian consulate in Boston. Targets confirmed, he noted. Kirill Baranov and Alexei Nevsky. Both GRU officers operating under diplomatic immunity. Their presence confirms our assessment, Riley said. This is a significant operation. The meeting proceeded with discussion of Meridian's crisis communications needs for a defense contractor client, technical language about regulatory compliance, and public relations strategies that provided perfect cover for intelligence gathering. Throughout, Vanessa maintained her professional persona, asking appropriate questions while revealing nothing of significance. After 90 minutes, Mills suggested lunch at an upscale restaurant nearby. The group moved to the elevators, surveillance tracking their progress through the building's security cameras. Movement to secondary location, reported a field agent. Protection detail in position. Russell tensed slightly as Vanessa entered the restaurant with the Meridian team. Public locations introduced variables that couldn't be fully controlled. Despite the protection detail positioned throughout the venue, risk remained. The lunch proceeded without incident until coffee was served. Mills excused herself to take a phone call, leaving Vanessa briefly alone with Baranov and Nevsky. The conversation shifted subtly, questions about her previous work, her connections to defense industry clients, her knowledge of military procurement processes. They're probing, Russell noted, testing her access and awareness. Through her concealed microphone, Vanessa's responses were audible, carefully calibrated to suggest knowledge without specificity, access without confirmation. The performance was flawless, maintaining her cover while gathering intelligence on their interests. When Mills returned, she brought unexpected news. Our CEO would like to meet you personally, she told Vanessa. He's rarely in Boston, but he's made time this afternoon. It's quite an honor. The operations dynamic shifted immediately. This unscheduled meeting wasn't in the operational plan. CEO not identified in company records, reported an analyst. Meridian's official leadership structure shows Mills as highest authority. It's Volkov, Russell concluded. He's inserting himself directly. Riley immediately contacted the field team. Be advised, potential primary target entering operational zone. Maintain surveillance, but do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. The protection detail acknowledged, adjusting positions to cover this new development. Russell studied the restaurant's layout on a tactical display, identifying potential extraction routes if necessary. Vanessa has no extraction signal, he reminded Riley. If Volkov makes her, she has no way to alert us. Standard protocols remain in effect, Riley replied. If she doesn't return to her hotel by 1800 hours, we initiate recovery operations. Russell nodded, understanding the constraints. Direct communication would compromise the operation. Vanessa was effectively on her own for the next critical phase. After lunch, the group returned to Meridian's offices. Mills escorted Vanessa to an executive suite on the top floor, a space not included in the building's official floor plans and beyond the reach of their surveillance. We've lost visual, reported a technician. Audio still functional, but degraded. Through static-filled audio, they heard a door opening, followed by Mills's voice. Catherine, please meet Alexander Meridian, our founder and chairman. A male voice responded, Russian accent carefully modulated to suggest Eastern European, but not specifically Russian. Ms. Bennett, a pleasure. Your reputation precedes you. Volkov, Russell confirmed, recognizing the voice despite its altered cadence. He's using the Alexander Meridian identity. The conversation proceeded with standard corporate pleasantries, discussion of Vanessa's experience, Meridian's global clients, the Boston position's responsibilities. Throughout, Volkov maintained his corporate persona, though subtle probing questions about government contracts and military connections appeared with increasing frequency. He's fishing, Riley observed, testing whether she was briefed on his identity. She knows the protocol, Russell replied. No recognition, no reaction. The audio captured Volkov offering Vanessa a tour of the executive floor, separating her from Mills. As they walked, his questions became more pointed. Your husband's work must have been fascinating, he said casually. Intelligence operations require exceptional discipline, the kind of discipline that shapes a marriage. Russell never discussed his work, Vanessa responded smoothly. Military spouses learn to respect operational security. Of course, yet surely you formed impressions, patterns of deployment, contacts, concerns. Only that each deployment changed him in ways I couldn't understand. Vanessa's voice revealed calculated vulnerability. That distance eventually destroyed our marriage. A common casualty of such work. Volkov's tone suggested sympathy. And now this unfortunate situation with Mr. Hargrove. His legal troubles must complicate your divorce proceedings. Significantly, the FBI has questioned me repeatedly about his activities. And what have you told them? The truth, that I knew nothing about his other clients or interests. My relationship with Philip was personal, not professional. A pause. They believe you? I believe so. After all, it's the truth. Russell noted the perfect balance in her response. Not too defensive, not too confident. Vanessa was handling the operational interaction with remarkable skill. You know, Catherine, Volkov continued, Meridian maintains offices in several cities with significant defense industry presence. Your experience might be valuable beyond Boston. Perhaps Washington again, or San Diego. I'd be open to various locations, she replied. My primary goal is a fresh start away from the complications in Alexandria. Understandable. Divorce, scandal, federal investigations, quite overwhelming. Another pause. Your security clearance application is being processed. Some of our defense clients require staff with appropriate clearances. The trap was being set. Security clearance applications involved extensive background investigations, a perfect mechanism for Russian intelligence to gain legitimate access to her personal information, contacts, and history. I wasn't aware the position required clearance, Vanessa responded, slight surprise evident in her voice. A recent development. One of our primary clients has expanded their government contracts. Volkov's tone remained casual. I hope that's not a concern. Not at all. I maintained a spousal clearance during my marriage. Excellent. We could expedite the process through our contacts at the Defense Security Service. Russell tensed at this reference. They're creating a parallel security clearance process. Standard intelligence gathering technique. Riley nodded. And legitimizing their access to her in the process. The tour concluded with Volkov escorting Vanessa back to Mills, with instructions to complete the employment paperwork immediately. The accelerated timeline suggested urgency on Volkov's part, either operational necessity or growing suspicion. Have the extraction team ready, Russell instructed. Once she signs those documents, the operation concludes. We move immediately. Riley contacted the field team, positioning assets for immediate action. The timing would be critical, extracting Vanessa while simultaneously capturing as many of Volkov's network as possible. On screen, they watched Vanessa completing employment documents under Mill's supervision. Her hand moved steadily across the papers, signature after signature. With each document, the trap closed further, both Volkov's and their own. Extraction team in position, reported a field agent. Ready on your command. Russell checked the tactical display one final time, confirming all elements were in place. Execute on my mark. The moment Vanessa set down her pen, having completed the final document, Russell gave the command, execute now. The operation unfolded. Within seconds, FBI counterintelligence teams entered Meridian's offices from multiple access points. Simultaneously, agents appeared in the executive suite where Volkov had returned to monitor the final phase of Vanessa's recruitment. Through the building's security cameras, Russell watched as agents secured Mills and the Meridian team. On the executive floor, however, Volkov had anticipated the intervention. As agents approached, he activated an emergency exit, disappearing through a service corridor. Target 1 is mobile, reported the team leader. Heading for northeast stairwell. Block all exits, Riley ordered. He's still in the building. Russell focused on Vanessa's position. She had been secured by the protection team and was being moved toward a service elevator for extraction. The operation was proceeding according to plan, despite Volkov's escape attempt. Ms. Bennett secure, confirmed the protection detail. Moving to extraction point Alpha. Relief washed over Russell momentarily before his tactical focus returned. Volkov remained the primary objective. Without his capture, the operation would be incomplete. Security camera footage tracked Volkov's movement through the building's emergency stairs, descending rapidly toward the parking garage. Russell analyzed his likely escape route, identifying the most probable exit point. He's heading for the northeast corner of the garage, he reported. Likely has a vehicle staged. Team 3 repositioning to intercept, Riley confirmed. The surveillance feed from the parking garage showed Volkov emerging from the stairwell, moving with calm efficiency toward a black sedan parked near an exit ramp. As FBI agents converged on his position, he reached into his jacket, a motion that triggered immediate tactical response. Weapon! Weapon! Shouted an agent through the radio. The confrontation escalated in seconds. Volkov, recognizing his escape was compromised, turned his experience to creating chaos. A small explosive device, likely a flashbang grenade, detonated, filling the garage level with smoke and confusion. I've lost visual, reported the surveillance technician. Smoke obscuring cameras. Radio chatter from the garage indicated disorientation among the agents. Volkov had created the distraction he needed. By the time visibility returned, the black sedan was accelerating up the exit ramp, FBI vehicles in pursuit. Target mobile in black Audi sedan, came the report. In pursuit on Atlantic Avenue. Russell watched the tactical map as GPS tracked the pursuit through Boston's downtown streets. Volkov's driving skills were evident, navigating through traffic while maintaining tactical awareness of his pursuers. He's heading for the Seaport District, noted an analyst. Possible marina extraction. The assessment aligned with Russell's understanding of Volkov's methodology. The Russian operative would have multiple escape routes prepared, likely including maritime options to evade road blockades. Notify Coast Guard and Harbor Patrol, Riley ordered. Establish waterside containment. The pursuit continued through Boston's waterfront district, Volkov's vehicle maintaining distance from FBI pursuers while navigating toward the harbor. Russell studied the tactical map, identifying Volkov's most likely destination. He's heading for the private marina at Fan Pier, he concluded. Likely has a vessel staged. Riley immediately redirected assets to intercept. All units converge on Fan Pier Marina. Possible watercraft extraction in progress. As the tactical situation evolved, Russell received confirmation that Vanessa had been successfully extracted and was en route to a secure location. That objective, at least, had been achieved. The pursuit reached the marina as Volkov abandoned his vehicle, sprinting toward the docks with FBI agents in close pursuit. Surveillance drones deployed over the harbor provided aerial view of Volkov reaching a sleek powerboat, keys already in hand. Target attempting watercraft escape, reported the pursuit team, requesting immediate maritime intervention. Russell watched as Volkov started the boat's engines, preparing to flee. The operation was reaching its critical juncture. Either Volkov would escape, preserving his network's leadership, or he would be captured, dealing a significant blow to Russian intelligence operations. As the boat began pulling away from the dock, a Coast Guard vessel appeared at the marina entrance, blocking the primary escape route. Simultaneously, FBI agents reached the dock, weapons trained on Volkov's position. Target contained, came the report. Standoff in progress. Russell studied the drone footage, assessing Volkov's options. The Russian operative stood at the boat's controls, trapped between approaching federal agents and the Coast Guard blockade. His expression remained calculating, evaluating scenarios even as his position deteriorated. He's got something else planned, Russell warned. This is too easy. As if confirming his assessment, Volkov suddenly raised his hands in apparent surrender. The gesture was incongruous with everything Russell knew about the operative. Volkov would never willingly submit to capture. It's a diversion, Russell realized. Check the boat. The warning came too late. As FBI agents approached the vessel, Volkov triggered a secondary device. The boat's fuel tanks ignited, creating a controlled explosion that launched Volkov into the water while temporarily blinding the agents with smoke and debris. "Man overboard," shouted the Coast Guard commander. "Target in water, east side of the dock." Chaos ensued as multiple agencies attempted to locate Volkov in the harbor waters. Thermal imaging from overhead drones scanned the surface, but the Russian operative had vanished beneath the waves. Possible submersible device, suggested an analyst. Russian intelligence has deployed diver propulsion vehicles in previous operations. The assessment aligned with Russell's understanding of Volkov's capabilities. The elaborate escape, coordinated vehicles, prepared boat, underwater extraction, suggested extensive planning and resources. "Expand the search perimeter," Riley ordered. "All harbor exits, neighboring coastline, potential rendezvous vessels." The search continued for hours, expanding to include underwater drones and dive teams. Despite the comprehensive effort, Volkov had successfully evaded capture, at least temporarily. By evening, the operational focus shifted to securing the intelligence gathered from the Meridian offices. 17 individuals had been detained, including Mills and the 2 known Russian operatives. Documents, computers, and communications devices had been seized, providing valuable insight into the network structure and targets. In the Secure Command Center, Russell reviewed the preliminary findings with Colonel Riley. Meridian was functioning as a legitimate consulting firm, he noted, studying the corporate records. Classic intelligence front, real business, real clients, real revenue. Perfect cover for their actual operations. Textbook implementation, Riley agreed. Mills appears to have been partially witting, aware that they were gathering information on defense contractors, but unaware of the Russian connection. She believed they were corporate intelligence, not foreign agents. The seized documents revealed Meridian's extensive network: defense contractors, military personnel, government officials, all targeted through seemingly legitimate business relationships. The operation had compromised sensitive information across multiple classified programs. Vanessa's position would have given them access to crisis communications for defense projects, Russell observed. Perfect position to identify vulnerabilities, program details, and security protocols. And through her, continued access to you. Riley handed him a folder containing surveillance photos. These were found in Volkov's office. He was monitoring you long before Vanessa filed for divorce. The photos showed Russell at various locations, leaving the Pentagon, meeting with intelligence colleagues, even at their Alexandria home. The timeline suggested surveillance had begun nearly 18 months earlier, well before any marital problems had surfaced. They identified you as a potential threat to their operation, Riley continued. Your background in counterintelligence made you uniquely capable of recognizing their patterns. The divorce was a preemptive neutralization. The realization shifted Russell's understanding of everything that had transpired. The breakdown of his marriage hadn't merely been exploited by Russian intelligence. It had been actively engineered. Hargrove hadn't simply opportunistically pursued an unhappy spouse. He had been deliberately inserted into their lives. Where is Vanessa now? He asked. Secure location in Cambridge. Debriefing with FBI counterintelligence. Riley checked her phone. Initial assessment indicates she was an unwitting target, not a collaborator. Russell nodded, relief mixing with lingering uncertainty. The operational clarity he'd maintained throughout the day wavered as personal implications resurfaced. The Pentagon team wants your final assessment by 0800 tomorrow, Riley said, recognizing his need for space. Your reinstatement paperwork is complete. Lieutenant Colonel Bennett, should you choose to accept. After Riley departed, Russell remained in the command center, reviewing intelligence gathered from the operation. Volkov had escaped, but his network lay exposed, 17 operatives in custody, communication channels identified, target lists secured. By any professional measure, the operation had been a success. Yet Russell felt unsettled. The personal cost of this particular mission extended beyond operational parameters. His marriage, his divorce, his sense of betrayal, all had been manipulated by foreign intelligence as operational vectors. The clarity of purpose that had sustained him was now clouded by the realization that his most private pain had been weapons in someone else's war. His secure phone rang, the team monitoring Vanessa's debriefing. She's requesting to speak with you, reported the agent. Debriefing complete. Medical evaluation shows no concerns. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Russell responded. The drive to Cambridge gave him time to process the day's revelations. The tactical part of his mind categorized and analyzed the intelligence implications, while another part, more personal, less disciplined, grappled with what it meant for him and Vanessa. The safe house was a nondescript colonial in a quiet neighborhood, perfect anonymity in suburban camouflage. Inside, FBI agents maintained security while the debriefing team gathered their materials. Vanessa sat alone in the living room, a cup of untouched tea before her. They told me everything, she said as Russell entered. About Volkov, about how long they'd been watching us. About Hargrove being deliberately placed in our lives. Russell sat across from her, maintaining professional distance despite the personal nature of the conversation. The intelligence suggests they targeted our marriage as a means of neutralizing me. They didn't create problems that weren't there, Vanessa said quietly. But they exploited every vulnerability, every moment of disconnection. Hargrove appeared exactly when I was most receptive, after your third deployment, when you came home more closed off than ever. The timing aligned with Russell's intelligence assessment. A calculated insertion point. That's what we were to them. Insertion points. Assets. Targets. Vanessa's voice hardened. They used our marriage as an operational resource. Russell recognized the anger building within her, the same cold fury he had channeled into his counterattack against Hargrove. Vanessa. No. She cut him off. I need to say this. I made choices, terrible choices. I betrayed our marriage by turning to Hargrove. I allowed myself to be manipulated into false allegations against you. Those actions are mine, regardless of Russian manipulation. Her accountability was unexpected but welcome. Russell had prepared for defensiveness, for displacement of responsibility. But knowing we were targeted, she continued, knowing they deliberately exploited our vulnerabilities, it changes how I understand what happened between us. It doesn't change the outcome, Russell noted. The divorce proceeds as agreed. Does it? Vanessa met his gaze directly. Is that still what you want? Now that we know the full context. The question penetrated the professional distance Russell had maintained throughout the operation. What did he want? Before the Hargrove revelation, before the counterintelligence operation, the answer had seemed clear: clean separation, professional distance, emotional detachment. Now, with the broader picture revealed, certainty wavered. I don't know, he admitted. Intelligence operations focus on facts, not emotions. The facts suggest our marriage was deliberately targeted, but that doesn't automatically repair the damage done. No, it doesn't. Vanessa's honesty matched his own. Trust was broken, by both of us, in different ways. You never fully let me into your world. I turned to someone else when I felt shut out. The assessment was painfully accurate. Their marriage had contained the vulnerabilities that Russian intelligence had exploited precisely because they had created them. What happens now? She asked. Russell considered the question carefully. Professionally, I've been offered reinstatement. Lieutenant Colonel, assigned to a counterintelligence task force focused on Russian operations. You're going back in. It's what I do best. The admission came without apology. The Pentagon needs experienced officers who understand how these operations work. And personally, Russell stood and moved to the window, scanning the street outside from professional habit. That's more complicated. The divorce settlement is fair. Your freedom from Hargrove's manipulation is secured. You can pursue whatever path serves your interests. That's not what I asked. Vanessa stood as well, closing the distance between them. I'm asking what you want, Russell. Not what's tactically sound or operationally efficient. What do you want? The directness of her question cut through the professional barriers he maintained. What did he want? Beyond operational success, beyond tactical victories, beyond counterintelligence objectives? I want. He began, then paused, recalibrating. I want what I had when I believed in us. Before deployments and distance and professional barriers compromised that connection. That's not possible, Vanessa said gently. We can't go back. Too much has happened. No, we can't. Russell turned to face her fully. But moving forward might be possible. With a clearer understanding of the forces that targeted us and the vulnerabilities they exploited. Meaning we consider postponing the divorce. Not reconciliation, not yet. But a pause to reassess without Russian intelligence manipulating the circumstances. Vanessa considered this proposal with the careful evaluation he recognized from her corporate career, weighing options, calculating risks, assessing potential outcomes. A tactical retreat to reconsider the battlefield, she said with a small smile. Very military of you. Old habits, he acknowledged. It won't be easy. Trust has been severely damaged on both sides. I'm aware. Russell maintained direct eye contact. But tactical disadvantage doesn't automatically mean strategic defeat. The professional language provided safe distance for an emotional conversation, familiar territory for both of them. Vanessa recognized the pattern and responded in kind. Parameters for this operational pause? She asked. Professional transparency on both sides. Regular communication. Separate residences while we reassess. No legal proceedings until mutual agreement to continue or withdraw. Counseling. Russell hesitated only briefly. Acceptable. With appropriate security protocols given my reinstatement. Vanessa extended her hand formally, as she might to conclude a business negotiation. Agreed. Russell accepted the handshake, noting the familiar determination in her eyes, the same quality that had first attracted him years ago. Whatever happened between them, they would proceed with clear parameters and mutual respect. The protection detail will remain in place until Volkov is apprehended, he added. Your security remains a priority. Always the operative, she said, but without criticism. As Russell prepared to leave, Vanessa called after him. Russell, when this is over, when Volkov is caught, and we've had time to reassess, what do you think happens to us? He turned back, considering the question he applied to operational assessments. Best case, we rebuild with greater awareness of our vulnerabilities and strengths. Worst case, we proceed with divorce, but without manipulation or false pretenses. And the most likely scenario? Intelligence doesn't predict emotions, Vanessa. It only identifies patterns and probabilities. He offered a rare smile. Some variables remain unpredictable. 3 months later, Russell stood before the wall of monitors in the Pentagon's Joint Counterintelligence Task Force Operations Center. Surveillance footage tracked a target through the crowded streets of Istanbul, Dmitry Volkov, finally located after his escape from Boston. Target confirmed, reported the surveillance team. Facial recognition positive match. 97% confidence. Maintain distance, Russell instructed. Identify all contacts before moving to containment. Colonel Riley joined him at the tactical display. Turkish intelligence is cooperating fully. Extraction teams in position when you give the word. Russell nodded, studying Volkov's movements with professional detachment. The Russian operative moved with confident ease through the Grand Bazaar, unaware that his position had been compromised. Whatever escape he had planned from Boston had succeeded, but his reemergence had been inevitable. Men like Volkov couldn't remain inactive for long. Lieutenant Colonel, a communications officer called. Secure line for you. Priority Alpha. Russell moved to the secure phone, maintaining visual contact with the surveillance feed. Bennett. Russell. Vanessa's voice was instantly recognizable. I just received the Meridian case update from the FBI. 17 indictments, including Catherine Mills. Confirmed. Russell watched as Volkov entered a small cafe. The network has been dismantled domestically. Only external assets remain. And Hargrove. Cooperating fully. His legal expertise has proven valuable in building cases against his Russian handlers. Russell noted the irony. The attorney who had specialized in destroying marriages was now specializing in destroying the intelligence network that had employed him. I've been cleared to return to Alexandria, Vanessa continued. The protection detail is being withdrawn. I approved the recommendation this morning, Russell confirmed. Threat assessment indicates you're no longer a priority target. A pause. Will you be home this weekend? The question carried multiple layers of meaning. Home, the neutral territory they had established during their operational pause. This weekend, their agreed schedule for reassessment discussions. Russell calculated quickly, evaluating the current operations timeline. Yes, barring operational developments, I'll be there Friday evening. Good. Her voice softened slightly. The counselor thinks we're making progress. Apparently, Russian intelligence targeting creates unique therapeutic challenges. Russell smiled despite the operational environment. I imagine we've expanded her professional experience considerably. That's one way to put it. Vanessa hesitated before adding, be careful, Russell, whatever you're doing. Always. He ended the call as Volkov exited the cafe, resuming his journey through Istanbul's winding streets. Riley approached again. Target on the move. Extraction window in approximately 12 minutes. Russell nodded, professional focus returning fully. Proceed as planned. I want him alive and talking. Personal stake in this one? Riley asked, recognizing the intensity in his voice. Professional thoroughness, Russell corrected. Volkov's network targeted American intelligence assets through their personal relationships. That methodology requires comprehensive dismantling. The truth was more complex. Volkov had weaponized Russell's marriage, exploiting personal vulnerabilities for operational advantage. The response was both professional and personal, a calculated strike against an enemy who had violated boundaries most intelligence officers considered sacred. Target approaching extraction point, reported the field team. Turkish assets in position. Russell watched as Volkov paused at a street corner, checking his surroundings with practiced caution. The Russian operative sensed something, a shift in the environment, a tactical anomaly that triggered his professional instincts. Too late. The extraction team moved, converging from multiple directions. Volkov's hand moved toward his jacket, but Turkish agents were already upon him. Within seconds, he was secured and moving toward an unmarked vehicle. Target acquired, confirmed the team leader. Proceeding to secure location Alpha. A ripple of satisfaction moved through the operations center, professional appreciation for a well-executed mission. Russell maintained his composed exterior, though internal satisfaction ran deeper. Volkov's capture represented more than operational success. It symbolized the closing of a personal chapter. Congratulations, Lieutenant Colonel, Riley said. Your counterintelligence assessment was flawless. We couldn't have located him without your profile of his likely movements. Intelligence is pattern recognition, Russell replied. Volkov's patterns became predictable once we understood his operational priorities. The same could be said of personal relationships, he reflected. His marriage to Vanessa had followed patterns neither of them had fully recognized until external forces exploited them. Now, with those patterns identified, new possibilities emerged, not reconstruction of what had been, but construction of something more resilient. The FBI director wants a full briefing tomorrow, Riley continued. Your presence is requested, given your unique involvement in this case. I'll be there. Russell checked his watch. But I have a prior commitment this evening. The operational pause. Riley asked with uncharacteristic directness. Reassessment phase, Russell corrected, using the terminology he and Vanessa had established. Some operations require personal attention. Riley nodded, understanding the reference. Intelligence officers spend their careers protecting others' marriages while often losing their own. Breaking that pattern would be noteworthy. Pattern recognition is only valuable if it leads to pattern disruption when necessary, Russell responded. As he departed the operations center, Russell felt the professional clarity that had defined his military career merging with something less tactical but equally important: emotional intelligence that recognized value beyond operational parameters. The drive to Alexandria gave him time to transition between worlds, from Lieutenant Colonel Bennett of Joint Counterintelligence to Russell, a man reassessing his most important relationship through clearer eyes. The house they now shared part-time, neutral territory for their reassessment process, was neither their original Alexandria home nor the Stark apartment he'd maintained during the divorce proceedings. This new space represented their current status: intentional, carefully structured, with clear boundaries and shared objectives. Vanessa was already there when he arrived, reviewing documents at the dining table. She looked up as he entered, professional assessment automatically registering his posture, expression, energy level. "It's done," she said, reading his demeanor correctly. "You found him." "Operation complete," Russell confirmed. "Extraction successful." "Good." She closed the folder before her. "Are you hungry? I ordered from that Thai place you like." The normalcy of the question contrasted with the day's counterintelligence operation, creating the cognitive dissonance that had always characterized their relationship. Russell recognized the pattern but didn't resist it. Some dissonance was inevitable when building bridges between separate worlds. "Starving," he admitted, removing his jacket. "Been in the operations center since 0400. They moved through dinner with the comfortable efficiency of people who knew each other's habits, discussing neutral topics before gradually shifting toward their scheduled reassessment conversation. "The counselor suggested we address the compartmentalization issue directly," Vanessa began, referencing the professional habit that had contributed to their previous disconnection: "Your tendency to separate operational and personal matters." "A security protocol that became a relationship barrier," Russell acknowledged. "Necessary professionally but damaging personally. And my need for certainty and stability," Vanessa added. "Also understandable, but ultimately unrealistic given your work." The calm analysis of their patterns felt strange yet productive, like an operational debriefing, but focused on emotional intelligence rather than tactical outcomes. "The question remains," Russell said, "whether understanding these patterns is sufficient to change them." "Intelligence is an action," Vanessa agreed, using his professional language. "Knowing the vulnerability doesn't automatically secure it." "No, but it creates the possibility of adjustment." Russell met her gaze directly. "Our 3-month operational pause concludes next week. A decision point approaches." Vanessa nodded, accepting the timeline they had established. "Proceed with divorce or attempt reconciliation with modified parameters." Essentially, she studied him with the careful attention she'd always brought to important negotiations. "What do you want, Russell? Now that Volkov is captured, Hargrove is cooperating, and the immediate threat is neutralized, what do you want for us?" The question deserved careful consideration. Russell had spent his career making rapid tactical assessments under pressure, but personal decisions required different analysis. "I want to attempt reconciliation," he finally said. "Not restoration of what was, but creation of something more resilient. With clearer boundaries, more transparent communication, and mutual respect for our different worlds." Vanessa absorbed his answer, her expression revealing careful evaluation. "The probability of success?" "Intelligence doesn't predict emotions," he reminded her. "It only identifies patterns and possibilities. Then we proceed without certainty," she concluded. "Acceptable risk?" "Acceptable," Russell confirmed. "The potential value outweighs the tactical vulnerabilities." Their negotiation complete, Vanessa smiled. The genuine expression he remembered from before deployments and distance and Russian intelligence had complicated their lives. "You're still translating emotions into operational terms," she observed. "Old habits," he acknowledged, "but with new awareness." As they cleared the dinner dishes together, Russell reflected on the parallel operations that had defined recent months: the counterintelligence mission that had culminated in Volkov's capture, and the personal reassessment that was culminating in this decision point. Both had required intelligence gathering, pattern recognition, tactical adjustment, and strategic patience. Both had involved risk assessment and potential compromise. Both had demanded his complete focus and professional skill. The difference was in the objective. Counterintelligence operations aimed to neutralize threats and secure assets. Personal relationships aimed for something more complex. Connection that transcended tactical advantage. Vulnerability that created strength rather than weakness. You know, Vanessa said as they finished cleaning up, when I filed for divorce, I never imagined it would lead to helping capture a Russian spy network. Intelligence operations rarely follow anticipated trajectories, Russell replied. Adaptation is essential. Is that your way of saying life is unpredictable? It's my way of saying that even when variables change, mission objectives can still be achieved through tactical flexibility. Vanessa laughed softly. That's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me. Russell smiled, recognizing the truth in her observation. His professional language had always been his default mode of expressing deeper truths, a pattern they both now recognized and accepted rather than resisted. Tomorrow I briefed the FBI director on Volkov's capture, he said. But tonight we're just us, Vanessa finished. No operations, no intelligence gathering, no tactical objectives. Precisely. As they moved to the living room, Russell felt the familiar clarity that had defined his military career merging with something equally powerful but fundamentally different. The clarity that came from choosing vulnerability over tactical advantage, connection over operational security. The war that had begun in a courtroom with false allegations had concluded with truth about Russian intelligence operations, about their marriage, about the patterns that had made both vulnerable to exploitation. Russell Bennett had executed countless operations during his military career, neutralizing threats and securing objectives. But this, the calculated reconstruction of a relationship deliberately targeted by foreign intelligence, might be his most significant mission yet. Not because it served national security or counterintelligence objectives, but because it represented the rarest of victories. One where personal and professional integrity aligned perfectly, where the objective served the operative as much as the operation. A calculated strike, indeed, but against the forces that would separate rather than connect, isolate rather than strengthen. And that, Russell reflected as Vanessa's hand found his, was worth fighting for. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.